Joey Aguilar, the projected starter for UCLA in 25, he turns the ball over a lot. Okay, so what? Here's why you're overreacting to his previous numbers.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, where we get started today is there's been a lot of noise and finger pointing at, oh, look at Joey Aguilar, the new incoming UCLA transfer quarterback. Oh, look at his numbers. He led the FBS. He led the country in interceptions thrown. Okay, all right, get over it. Here's why it doesn't matter. Let's take a look at Joey Aguilar's numbers here in 2024. A step down from what they were for a good App State team in 2023. There's no doubt about it. In 11 games, he threw 14 picks. Okay, that's a little more than one per game. But to go along with it, is 23 touchdowns thrown, over 3,000 yards passing, and close to 275 yards passing a game. If any UCLA quarterback in their system this year had those types of numbers, we would be salivating. But no, UCLA is coming from a couple years of mediocre offense where they got from mediocre, okay, decent Chip Kelly numbers to, just down and out of it with the Eric Bieniemy offense, all right? And that took a toll on Ethan Garbers, for sure. Or what they had to deal with Dante Moore as a true freshman, where I believe, he threw 9 to 10 interceptions and was a turnover machine, 9 interceptions, including quite a few pick sixes. Okay, don't tell me you're just sitting there, you're going to go nitpick the numbers of Joey Aguilar like you didn't sit through 2008 when Kevin Kraft, the starting quarterback, threw for 20 picks and 7 touchdowns. You heard that right, 20 picks and 7 touchdowns. So you're going to sit here and act like a dude who threw for 3,000 yards in a day and age where we throw the ball more than ever, including more than 16, 17 years ago, with a much better quarterback from the JUCO ranks transferring in that Aguilar was, proving it at App State, compared to, say, Kevin Kraft of yesteryear. Now, yes, you're going from an awful quarterback to what I think is a good quarterback. Let's look at, who's the last decent UCLA quarterback? Maybe you're going to say we love the heart of Ethan Garbers, but we're going to point to the numbers the last 2 years of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Okay, so DTR, he was a bit of a turnover machine himself. He was a good rusher. He could do a lot of things on the ground. Had some ability throwing the football, much better than the last couple of years, but certainly wasn't a true gunslinger. Not to be confused with Genslinger like New Girl, but gunslinger like Joey Aguilar is. So if you even get what he did in 2024, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, you look at the numbers that he led the FBS in interceptions thrown. Okay, cool. Did you know that in the last 15 to close to 20 years, that's the least amount of interceptions thrown by a quarterback that's led the country? The least amount, 14 picks, in which Braden Shager's right behind. So if UCLA picked off Hawaii's starting quarterback a couple more times, he would have had a bunch more. Let me point to a kid from East Carolina, Jake Garcia, who threw 12 picks in 6 games played at East Carolina. So there's much worse things that can be happening if UCLA is getting a quarterback that's a little turnover prone. Okay, that's what UCLA's been dealing with the last few years. And when they actually had a quarterback that made plays, this team went somewhere. It was a different program with Chip Kelly, but they had a quarterback like DTR making plays. All right, that was fun when he was an older, much more mature quarterback, 23, 24, right? 22, 23, his 4th, 5th years at UCLA. That's what they're going to get with Joey Aguilar in his 5th year of playing college football. 2 years, a couple years down in JUCO, a couple years at App State. You bring in the young, exciting mind of Tino Sinceri. You see what the incoming commits that committed to Tino talked about. Hey, quarterbacks. You see what Joey Aguilar said. Hey, I like what he's been able to do. Tino has already coached against Joey Aguilar, so he knows what this kid can do. This is an absolute steal for UCLA in the portal. So if you're like, hey, this kid turns over the ball a lot. All right, so let's look at the last few years where they've been turning over the ball and they've been unable to move the ball vertically with any consistency. And in order to be good throwing the ball down the field, you're going to turn it over. You look at Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. He was close to second or third in the country when it comes to interception thrown, and he threw for 15 in a single year. I don't see anybody pointing to his numbers of interceptions thrown in college as a reason why he hasn't dominated in the NFL. Now, I'm not saying Joey Aguilar has had problems. He's going to be an NFL quarterback all the way, but some of the better quarterbacks with good numbers throw a lot of picks, so you're going to have to live with it. And after last year's dismal offensive performance for a majority of the year, if you get a little bit of protection for this kid who can run the ball as well, and we saw how dangerous Garbers was running the football too when he had to make plays out of nothing. Imagine with just a little bit of offensive line help. What I think to be a decent receiver room, they might go get his App State running mate, who they've already offered in the portal, but he's already got quite a few offers as well. I look at Joey Aguilar and say, hey, okay, I'll take those 14 picks because UCLA hasn't had 3,000 yards passing in quite a few years. 23 touchdowns, okay. Now you replicate what you do on the air, on the ground, that's 25 touchdowns. You go back to the year before, close to 40 touchdowns he was accounted for in 2023. Man, I'll take that any day. Any day. His turnover numbers, okay, so he led the country in turnovers. Let's not forget DTR would fumble the football. Joey Aguilar, it's not like he's a fumbling machine. A little bit of a worse team around him in 2024. I would like to think UCLA is going to be a big upgrade from App State in 2024. I hope so. I hope with all the work they've been doing in the portal and continue to do so, that UCLA is getting somebody who is a step above Garbers. I doubted Garbers, but he was a good leader and had to take one for the team with this offense this year. Maybe he could have put up much bigger numbers in a different system. Who knows? But we just have to commend Garbers for sticking it out. We had to see true freshman quarterback play, and we got a true freshman quarterback play with Dante Moore, who could go ball out at Oregon, who could not. I don't know. We'll find out what happens with that, with him transferring out. But this has led for a one-year stopgap where it's like, oh, he's a turnover machine. I don't like those numbers. And what have we not seen? We've seen similar turnover numbers by the UCLA quarterbacks the last few years, even when they were doing things on offense through different systems and 3 to 4 different quarterbacks. Garbers, DTR, even Colin Schlee for a moment there, Dante Moore. And we're acting like the kid who's got the positives that I think far outweigh the negatives. And we're like, I don't know about that one, Chief. What? What are we looking at? Believe that he can do something. All right, he's going to make mistakes. He could throw for 14 interceptions next year. But I'm going to believe that he's also going to bring in close to 25 touchdowns to the air. Or if the new offensive coordinator, who is also the quarterback's coach, is this so-called QB guru, then maybe that number ticks down to 9. That's a couple extra possessions there. You get that touchdown marker closer to 26, 27, 28. Then all of a sudden, you're pushing some fairly decent top-tier quarterback buzz, all right? Outside Heisman radar if you're putting up some big numbers. That's the potential Aguilar has coming to UCLA with the new systems in place. Hopefully a little bit better protection, because some of those might be poor protection, whether it's at App State, if UCLA doesn't improve the offensive line, which is certainly a big issue heading into 2025, then that could lead to more turnover issues and less success. I'm just going to go off the notion that UCLA is going to fix those. But if we're going to sit here like, oh, look, it's turnover prone. He's turnover. What UCLA football game have we not watched over the last few years that has not been turnover prone? Go watch some Kevin Kraft 2008 highlights and be like, we're far cry better than that right now. All right? Now it's a different game, different quarterback, cool. But man, let's just not act like we're just grabbing some dude who's going to throw an interception every time he throws the ball. It's not what's happening. So let's believe in that. Now, if we're talking about offensive struggles, let's talk about the UCLA men's basketball team and what happened in Nebraska. Man, what went on there? From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. All you got to do is visit the website FanDuel.com, and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Win or lose. That's a deal. Make this the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, FanDuel.com. All right, so we're talking UCLA men's basketball after what was another dismal performance. All right, I know it's frustrating. I have concerns about the offense with UCLA, but I think there's a similar tendency. All right, UCLA, they're missing open shots. They're missing shots. Well, they played in a hostile environment on the road. Okay, yes, I'll listen to those Go Big Red in the chats, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Cool. This isn't 2,000 people in Cal, in Stanford, nobody caring, even though we all care as super fan. You know, we care about those old rivalries, even though they didn't always pack the stands, whether it be in Poly, whether it be up the coast to NorCal, to the Pacific Northwest, however it works, okay? It's going to be a different ball game when every single one of these road games, just like the football team dealt with, they're going to have packed out arenas, stadiums. Everything is going to have a next level fan intensity when UCLA comes to town, all right? That's just what it's going to be, and they're going to want to beat UCLA. Even more so in men's basketball. And the women are going to see this too because they're number one in the country. Indiana packed it out. They were bringing tough competition for was a 9 a.m. body clocks tip time, and they had to fight through those early shooting woes. They ended up beating Indiana. We'll talk more about them later. The men, though, can they not shoot? Well, let's not forget some of their biggest dismal performances, their worst outings, have come at the expense of either Eric Dailey Jr. being hurt or a no-show. One of his worst performances, as I talked about in that reaction post-game to the UCLA loss against Nebraska, Dailey Jr. didn't play. And I thought this was a guy that would play some minutes and he'd be important. No, this is a guy that was pretty much a starter at Oklahoma State. And then Oklahoma State was like, we're going to turn you into our version of Sebastian Mack and you play better off the bench. All right. So think of Eric Dailey Jr. as a de facto starter Sebastian Mack-like player. Obviously different things, right? Driving. They're different ball players. That's the role he filled when he was transferring over to UCLA. And with pretty much all these jobs up for grabs and no true center for UCLA at the start, then it's like, hey, Eric Dailey Jr. is a key component to what UCLA needs to do offensively. Now there's limitations. The hope is that he can guard 1 through 4 and help rebounding wise, but he's not going to help as much as if the development of the currently maybe unavailable William Kyle III of the Uber Athletic reigning Summit League Defensive Player of the Year, or you've got a Daimata who should probably get more playing time, or at least some more involvement in the offense, put him in the post, not have him work so much on pick and roll action, just get him in the post. Don't have him push these weird screens up near the three-point line. Have him post up, get guys to give him a lob, get him that right-handed hook shot that Mick Cronin says is much better to look at than it is his left-handed hook shot. So, one, when Eric Dailey Jr. has a bad game, it seems so goes the Bruins. Because Bilodeau has been putting up numbers, but against a bigger team, when Bilodeau's playing more of the 5, that's a mismatch, like it was against New Mexico. Like he had to battle through with Gonzaga, like it was against Arizona where they nearly lost. He was balling out against North Carolina, and UCLA had to take him off the floor due to foul trouble. Eric Dailey Jr. couldn't pick up the slack because he got hit in the face, so he wasn't on the court. So you can see when UCLA can't get Bilodeau the ball or they have a bigger team, that's a mismatch. And until UCLA has a true center in the game, that means Bilodeau as a 4 is going against a 5, and that's a mismatch. Even if he's shooting efficiently, even though he's putting him 15 points on good shot selection, I think, against Nebraska, that's what I believe, UCLA is still going to struggle with it because Nebraska was so deep and so tall looking up and down the lineup. Other than Fred Hoiberg's son in the lineup, they were pretty tall in the backcourt, up and down. So it's like, oh, they're missing open shots. But it's how are the closeouts affecting that? How is UCLA swinging the ball? Are they going inside out, getting an open three, a confident step into a three like Kobe Johnson was splashing against Gonzaga a couple weeks ago now? No, they're taking contested jumpers that have a few feet of separation, but a couple feet behind the three-point line against some size and no real movement. And we're seeing a stagnant offense where they're consistently wanting to use a little pick and roll action, bringing multiple defenders. The only guy that's been confident in dribble drive has been Sebastian Mack, and everybody knows that's exactly what he's going to do. It's a matter of if he gets the whistles and if he makes the free throws and if he can make a couple wild layup attempts. The other thing that didn't help in this Nebraska game was, all right, Sky Clark was clearly hurting on the left side of his body, taking two tough screens. So that takes away one of your more reliable ball handlers who is slowly coming into his own as more of the starting point guard option for Cronin this year. Someone who I think is starting to figure out his three-point stroke was kind of a non-factor in the Nebraska game. Now, the question marks are, how can UCLA awaken the combination of Dylan Andrews, Dominic Harris, and Trent Perry? They don't all need to be dominant. One of them needs to awaken. Now, you're asking a true freshman. Cronin, you have to believe he's very doubtful of freshman after last year. Dominic Harris, he is buried deep on the depth chart and hasn't been able to hit threes and is just lost on the court. All right, he just seems a little bit lost, and he's not fitting in the Cronin system. That tends to happen when you bring in 10 billion new players. Not everybody's going to work with this new Cronin system. And then there's Dylan Andrews, who's been there for years, developed, played on a good team, been the man on a bad team, and now he's trying to fit into this, we need you on a good team, or he's going to start losing minutes, and he probably would have if Eric Dailey Jr. was available to play against Nebraska, because he did Dylan Andrews, but he played less than 20 minutes and didn't look too good doing it, airballing some terrible three-point shots when he supposedly had worked on that three-point stroke. So for UCLA to go from good, and don't think, oh, they're mediocre. There's some team that looks like Steve Alford. No. Don't compare this program to where it was under Steve Alford. That is a criminal offense to a coach who has taken UCLA to the Final Four, was on the verge of getting to the national championship game from a charge call on Johnny Juzang and a half-court miracle from Jalen Suggs. Let's not violate the success and just downgrade about – don't even compare Alford to Mick Cronin. If any of you are doing that, because I've seen that, don't even do that. That is disrespectful to Mick Cronin. Alford, now they should have probably gone farther with that Lonzo Ball team. That's a different discussion. But Mick Cronin, if you're going to compare him to the Ben Howland day and age, yes, it's, it might be that case where outside of 3 Final Fours in a row and no championships, Mick Cronin could be 2.0 at Ben Howland. Now, how can UCLA ignite the offense? Stick your big man in the post and get him more minutes. Instead of working more pick and roll, find better entry passes to your big man where he's moving right, and that right-hand hook shot is taken more than he wants to go take that left-hand hook shot. Okay? Get Bilodeau more as the 4. Maybe move Dailey to the 3. Find a reliable option as the 1, and then figure out who's going to be your starting shooting guard and who's coming off the bench. Maybe you go back and forth between Kobe Johnson, your defensive option, versus Sebastian Mack. I've talked about Stefanovic needing more shots. He had double figures against Nebraska, even though he was inefficient. So this is clearly a UCLA team in my mind that's good. Even that Nebraska loss, they're still good. Now they're clearly a shade or two away from being great. But remember, the last 2 losses have come when Dailey Jr. was hurt and didn't play in the most of the game against North Carolina and did not play against Nebraska. So just kind of remember those things before shouting out like, they're not good, they're terrible. They're like the same old Bruin. Well, who didn't play? One of their starting key contributors who, when he does bad, UCLA has lost or almost lost the Arizona game before it took a miracle last end of the game comeback to dominate the final 8 minutes, and he sat on the bench. We're going to see UCLA probably lose 7 games, I think, in this season. It's realistic, and they can still compete for a Big Ten title. They can still compete to get to a Final Four, get to an Elite Eight, get to that third weekend challenge for a championship with a good bracket selection, of course. And the other thing that's true, until they utilize an hopefully eventual healthy William Kyle III or Diamata, they are going to struggle with size, which is exactly what Michigan brings. Some twin big men, right? They got big power in the post with Dusty May coming in for Michigan. And until they figure that out, whether it's the big backcourts, the big front courts, UCLA is going to struggle with those teams. And unless they game plan the last 48 hours, it could look similar to what happens against Michigan, where they get eaten up in the paint, and UCLA is going to have to shoot themselves from into the game from deep, from behind the arc to win the game. So are they great? No. Are they good? Certainly. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. But there's still a ways to go for this team to be at its final form to make a Final Four. Now, what we talk about next, we're going to talk UCLA women's basketball, the number one team in the country. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games, incredible experiences that can bring fans together like never before. And I can remember the excitement of past playoff games I've been to, and I can't wait to make new memories with this updated format and extra teams involved. Hey, Game Time, go get your tickets with Game Time. Check out these new playoff games or other sports as well. They've got every single event you can go check out. Game Time Picks makes it easier to get tickets for events, filters out the fluff, and only shows the incredible deals on great seats. And recently, I was able to use Game Time Picks to get great deals on a playoff game, whether it be Major League Baseball, whether it be my trip to New York, all these things. I found some of the best tickets with on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guarantee. It gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so where are we headed here with this UCLA women's basketball season? They had a pretty much wire-to-wire victory against Indiana. They've got some games coming up that I think they should win. They're currently on an Indiana swing right now. They played in Bloomington. They're going to West Lafayette against Purdue in Mackey Arena. I think the Bruins should be able to handle that on a Tuesday night when it should be another basic women's and men's doubleheader. Just like it was Saturday, you're going to get the women at 4. You're going to get the men later in the evening. So it'll be a fun night to talk UCLA basketball on January 7th, that Tuesday evening. But for the women to beat Purdue, I think they should be able to handle that easily. So when do I think this perfect stretch could come to an end in my mind? Well, with UCLA, I think, most likely going to beat Purdue on the road. I think they can handle Northwestern, Penn State at home. Those are a couple of games. It's when they start with the Coretta Scott King Classic, a new event that's been constructed. UCLA is going to play midday on January the 20th against Baylor in New Jersey. So they come back home, and then UCLA is going to go on a 3-game East Coast swing. Another one of these games that was added as a neutral site game where UCLA played in Paris. They played 3 in Hawaii. They played 1 in San Francisco. And this is another one of these games where they're going to play in Newark, New Jersey. All right, just between that border between New Jersey, and you take the path and you go over to New York. All right, you take that. Maybe they can do a little New York sightseeing. They get to Piscataway and take on Rutgers, who I think USC just demolished. And then you've got a very scrappy Maryland team waiting at the end of that road trip. So this is where UCLA, I think, can get to 18-0. All right, I'm fairly confident they can beat Baylor, but a neutral site East Coast game, middle of the day, which is another 9 a.m. body clock time for UCLA, could be a struggle. I think they could beat Baylor in that game. You got Rutgers. All right, nationally televised game on a Thursday night East Coast time. And then they play, after 2 days off, a Sunday morning tip against Maryland. All right, it's one of the toughest ones. It's the 3rd game on an East Coast trip. That's not often in college. You go play 3 games across the country in a sport like basketball in 1 week. You just don't do that. Baseball, yes, you're going to play your games every day. Softball, you see these. It's just that's a sport that's designed differently. You look now at what's very much a pro-like schedule that the women are going to face in this upcoming end of January stretch. And with Maryland, the end of it, all right, I wonder how weary they might be, how susceptible they might be. And if the Xfinity Center at College Park brings the energy, that is where I think UCLA could find themselves a little susceptible to losing a game. Now, a lot of these games in the Big Ten, including a Big 12 bout against Baylor coming up, they're all losable games. But the true game and the true stretch where UCLA, Lauren Betts, Corey Close could find themselves in a little bit of trouble is where they're finishing up playing Indiana. They come back home for 2 games back home against Northwestern and Penn State. They'll have a little bit of rest to start the new quarter, get things cooking, and then all of a sudden, it's going to not exactly heat up. You're going to go to like a frozen tundra. You're going to get very cold and go back east in New Jersey for 2, in Maryland for another, with another earlier tip against Maryland on a Sunday afternoon in what is a nationally televised game. And that one should have a lot of eyeballs on it. Maryland, UCLA. They come back and they're going to play some games where I'm going to expect them to win. We're going to have all our eyes on the UCLA USC matchup February 13th, where it should be sold out. The Galen Center should be rocking. But the one where they're most likely to lose before then is that Maryland game. Now, Lauren Betts has been dominant. You see Kiki Rice, after missing those few games to start the season with the off-season shoulder injury, she's filling in her form. I just wonder, how much is Corey Close going to keep mixing the starting lineup? Or is she going to have a set one at some point, and that's where the team is going to grow from there? Is it a matchup-based starting lineup, or is she going to keep her three-point shooters in or out, right? Sometimes it's Gardner in there. Sometimes it's Jones. Maybe it's both. Sometimes it's none. And it's with the Dugalich, it's a Jaquez. You see an Arnasalo in there, because you're going to expect, if healthy, Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice, guaranteed to be in the lineup. Now, the rest of that team, for the most part, can all start on any given night and give successful nights with rebounds, buckets, and defense. Now, it depends on the matchup, depends on the size, advantage, or disadvantage, the physicality of the opponent. Those are the things I wonder over these next few games heading into Maryland. Are we going to have a set starting lineup, or is Close going to continue to mix and match depending on who they play? Those are all things to look forward to coming up next. We'll talk more UCLA hoops, men's and women's, football, and everything else here on Locked On UCLA. So like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. And hey, let's get an 8 clap going, all right? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.